What's up, everybody, and welcome to the House of Holocrons, episode number 58. And in this one, we are celebrating the 25th year anniversary of The Phantom Menace, the prequel movie that started it all. And for me personally, the Star Wars movie that made me fall in love with Star Wars. As at 6 years of age, it was the very first Star Wars movie I ever got to see release in theaters and see it really come out live. So, Phantom Menace, beginning of the prequels, a very tumultuous film that caused a lot of waves in the Star Wars community before a time with Twitter and X or whatever you want to call it, when honestly the internet was still ablaze with opinions. It's a loved or it's a hated movie, and I do believe that it is a underestimated or very misunderstood too movie.
Yeah, we were born similar times. We were born between the two movies, episode 6 and episode 1. So, but yeah, it was crazy that episode 1 came out of nowhere because we had such a long gap.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic to be able to see a Star Wars movie in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
And even I remember as a kid, I really liked the movie. And growing up, I never had a problem with it. I know people always complained about it. I always thought the movie wasn't bad. I mean, there's parts. But there's also just memorable parts that I love. A lot of the designs, I really enjoy the designs for like the Starfighter. We got introduced to the double-bladed lightsaber, which was the coolest thing
That
when I
was
was
the
a
thing.
kid.
And crazy, you almost sometimes forget that they dropped that in the trailer. Like in the very first big trailer for
I didn't
Phantom
see
Menace.
the trailer for it, so I didn't know.
Yeah, okay. A lot of
I
people
was
didn't
completely
too.
surprised.
Yeah, but in the trailer, that's one of the big things that was like a gotcha, is that you see this crazy dude in all black. Like, what is this? He's like a new Darth Vader, but he doesn't wear a mask. He's got horned face, red face, horned head, and a dual lightsaber. And the whole world went ballistic over an unknown dark side character.
We could learn that lightsaber combat is completely different because what we've seen of in the past was a lot more slower, a lot more traditional fighting. Because it wasn't your traditional sword fighting that you see on movies. It was more of the line of the samurai, the slow, divisive strikes. When I say slow, they weren't, but slow compared to what we got in the prequels.
Right.
We got a completely new, more acrobatic. They were all over the place.
New technology, and the big thing, of course, is George was able to use this, something he'd been wanting to use since the get-go, CGI. He was now able to fill the world out the way that he really felt Star Wars should be filled out, to the point where after the prequels came out, he redoes every single original movie and re-releases them with added stuff.
Yeah, the CGI was still kind of early in those days. So some of it, and I mean, looking back, it still kind of looks bad. But I mean, if you look at other products of its time, they all kind of look around that. So it's not really.
When we were playing video games that had a solid maximum of like 1,000 pixels on the screen, like maximum, it looks fine. The CGI looked great for back, in the early 2000s and stuff. It looked fine.
Yeah, it's just people were upset going from the original trilogy with puppets and and practical effects to CGI, which everyone was doing CGI at that point. People stopped doing practical effects, so it wasn't like unexpected. It allowed for a lot more variety in aliens. We got a ton more different species.
Because computers were taking over all kinds of things. I mean, this is before Y2K, kids. If you don't know what that is, look it up.
Well, yeah. Well, early CGI kind of hit.
Yeah.
And there were some movies that you don't realize there's CGI in the early 90s. But because the whole thing wasn't CGI, just bits and pieces.
Yep.
And well, they actually did, because in the 80s we got more of the stop motion. That was the early version of CGI, and they didn't really use much of that. They used a little bit in Star Wars. The kind of the stop motion base practical, the animated effects.
Yeah, ILM and LucasArts really shining, doing their best job, always doing amazing when it came to pushing the forefront of this technology.
Yeah, well, they were one of the leads, which they kind of got a little help from Steve Jobs, who was at the time leading early Pixar for a lot of their CGI and stuff like that. which that studio at the time that was led by Steve Jobs, he kind of invested in and got really and big into it and helped push that CGI in industry. So yeah, it was there wasn't a lot of movies with CGI
Yeah.
at that moment, but they were starting to hit theaters, and you get a lot of movies later that got slightly better CGI, which was rare.
Yeah.
Or most of the time, really bad CGI. It was way worse than those effects for sure.
And that's one of the things that really made, I think, Phantom Menace shine is you still got the mix of practical and unpractical. Like with Ahmed Best with Jar Jar. When he's acting, he's literally still walking around with like a screen over his face so you can't really see his face besides like his mouth moving. And he has Jar Jar's head up on his head so the actors can look at it. It was a really good way for Lucas to kind of like mix how they're going to act to this thing. And then later we're going to go in and make it look like this really cool alien.
Yeah, and it was a confusing movie at the time because we got to remember that people were, when they looked at Star Wars, they saw an idea of what Star Wars is, and we kind of get that still in our heads of this whole recurring same theme. But Episode 1 was not like the sequels that followed it. It was completely different. There's nothing. The only thing similar, besides a few characters, was going to Tatooine, and that was only for a small part of the movie. And even going to Tatooine, we didn't see any of the same locations. We saw.
I mean, we got one of the coolest things ever. We get the pod race.
Yeah,
that sparked a whole nother fandom within the Star Wars world.
Yeah, well, made one of the best Star Wars video games at this time, for sure. Was the pod racing. I remember playing it on the Dreamcast when I was a kid. I didn't own the game at the time until I believe it came out like on PS2.
That was another thing though, the marketing. Yeah. It was right when that movie came out. Yeah. You couldn't go into a Target, a Kmart, a Walmart,
gas stations,
anywhere. The soda pops were all covered in Episode 1 memorabilia.
Yeah,
the Pepsi
chip bags, the cans, they all had the label. They're all.
I know a lot of people that have like a lot of people have literally.
McDonald's had Star Wars toys.
Yeah. Oh, awesome ones too. They were like the drink toppers. But everywhere, like just the Pepsi container that you got Pepsi out of at the store was an R2D2.
Yeah, they were. It was literally everywhere. There was big standees like you have. It was on everything. It was on shampoo bottles. You name it, they were everywhere.
Yeah,
surprising they weren't on women's razors.
And there might have been, and we didn't see it honestly because young boys didn't look at all at that, but. It was really everywhere. Toothpaste, toothbrushes.
Well, that because there's a woman's razor in the movie, so that's
right. Yeah, it's an amazing. It had a cultural phenomenon to it. People were dressing up to go to the movie, who then later thought it was probably one of the worst things they ever saw in their life because it wasn't the Star Wars like Mike was mentioning earlier that they wanted, that they thought Star Wars should be. But it does it have some clunky dialogue like every George Lucas film ever, sure. Like every director has like something that they're not the best at, or like they have moments that are like, whatever.
Yeah, rewatch Episode 4 that had clunky dialogue.
Exactly. Yeah. I always love it. Even Mark Hamill himself says, like when they're getting pulled in by the tractor beam and stuff, he's like, the way I started talking, I'm like, who says that? It's just the way it is, because that's what we liked about Star Wars, though, is no one explains to you the world, but this movie really did. Not only did we get to see where R2-D2 came from, we learned that Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, built C-3PO? What?
Yeah, the only thing I wish is they were more subtle about certain things. Like, I don't know if you did, but when I was a kid, I was like, I don't remember how old we were. It was like 8 or 9, I think.
Yeah, I was 6 in 98, so.
Yeah, I was around 8, I believe. And even then, I knew that Senator Palpatine was the bad guy in the hood. It was like, you could at least darken his face more to like be more of a surprise. It was quite obvious, even in Episode 1.
Oh, that's Darth Sidious. It's the same guy. That's weird. That was something I kind of, my family, we were like, that's the same actor. And I was like, oh, That's the same actor.
Yeah, I caught it as a kid in my first time watching. I was like,
Yeah.
if it's that obvious that that I was able to catch it, they could have done a little bit better. But I
But then
mean,
we also get characters like Padme Amidala, who to a lot of boys in our age group is number one heartthrob. Like Natalie Portman became a overnight just dream for so many young
I didn't
men.
realize she was 16 in the filming. I
Yeah,
didn't know that. I thought she was older than that. And then I
yeah, I did
rewatched it,
too.
and I was like, I can't believe how young she is.
Right?
I didn't realize that.
We get, so there's Keira Knightley, Natalie Portman, Ewan McGregor, I guess, had a bit of a name before Phantom Menace with Train Spotting and some of his other
Yeah,
stuff. Jake Lloyd had a few things, of course, more famous for child acting, but this was his big
yeah.
role, and that did not go
And
good
one
for
of
him
his
because
yeah
the
his
internet
last
is
role.
his first and last role because people are evil and mean and they
Yeah,
can't.
he's the only actor that really got attacked. I mean, we got a little bit with the guy that voiced Jar
Yeah,
Jar, or
Ahmad
that
Best
played Jar Jar.
wanted to. There were times where he was contemplating the ultimate end. So it's like, yeah, it got bad for those
I feel
few
like,
actors.
but the one the what's his name played
Jake
Anakin. I
Lloyd,
feel like he got it the worst though,
yes,
because he was the face and people hated the actor. I
yeah,
mean. I mean, you look at it. A lot of the stuff. I mean, Luke's older, and he still says some goofy stuff like that. It's just people, I guess, they wanted someone to blame, and since he was
yes.
the main character, and they
He was Anakin. Like the thing was, people could not unlatch the idea of Darth Vader. They could
yeah,
not believe that Darth Vader was a baby and a child at one point in time. He was supposed to always be this badass, killing machine pretty much. And then you see him as, oh no, that's right. The story that is being told in the entirety of the prequels is you need to understand how weak and sad Anakin is, and that's why he becomes Darth Vader. It's not out of
and
power.
then how it could have gotten that way because you get
Yeah.
the first seeds of him still because he starts his Jedi training late.
Yep.
He is attached to his mother. He's got really strong attachment to his mother, and that which Yoda mentions
Hmm.
is going to lead to his downfall.
Yeah. And well, this is also the first time, speaking of mentions, this is the first time we've ever heard of the Chosen One prophecy. This
Yeah.
was never mentioned in the original movie. So in the prequels, all of a sudden we find out, oh my God, Anakin is not only the most powerful Jedi, he's really important for a reason. Like Darth Vader was supposed to be the chosen one, bring balance to the Force, save everybody, destroy the Sith and stuff. And in the
But
end, he does.
and it kind of explains why Luke was special as
Hmm.
well, other than him being Darth Vader's son.
Right.
Just because he's Darth Vader's son, what made him special? You know, the son of the chosen one has to be pretty strong himself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it laid the groundwork pretty well. If you look back, when you first, I get it. If you go in the expectation of
Mhm.
seeing, the sequel to Episode 6,
Yeah.
you're going to be vastly disappointed. But if you go in and expect a completely new Star Wars movie that's going to lay some groundwork
Mhm.
for the story, it did pretty well.
Yeah.
Um,
And it gave us some, again, Darth Maul, another phenomenon, is still loved by so many to this day. The dual-sided lightsabers, played by Ray Parks, voiced by another, but like he didn't even talk but like 3 times in the whole movie. But it was amazing, At last, Master, we shall reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last, we shall have our revenge. And it's just really cool, dope lines. Newt Gunray and all that, Qui-Gon. I love Qui-Gon Jinn. He's one of the most loved Jedi out there. And just like in the scene, he's just trying to burn through the doors and stuff. There's some classic, amazing characters and amazing parts that this movie just pushes throughout all of Star Wars. I mean, Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon Jinn is a favorite of so many
yeah.
people. And Obi-Wan Kenobi did a great job, and Ewan McGregor did a great job in this, playing an Obi-Wan that is questioning, that is still very young, that is just literally still a Padawan at the beginning of the movie.
We learn, how kind of defiant he is,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of normal for Apprentice, but he seems a little bit more. And then you find out, his and you kind
He's
of
defiant in the weird way. He's defiant by trying to
well,
force Qui-Gon to do the Jedi Orders way.
we also learn that he kind of gets some of it from Qui-Gon as well,
Mm-hmm.
because Qui-Gon is in his own way, defiant about how he does things.
Mhm.
He doesn't do things the typical way. Yeah, and it's interesting to think about what happened if Qui-Gon stayed around. Would Anakin still
Yep.
come out the same way he would have?
And that,
Uh,
everybody, just fun fact, if you don't know why the song is called The Duel of Fates, it is because had Qui-Gon survived, Obi-Wan died, or I guess really if Qui-Gon survived at all. It doesn't have to be that Obi-Wan dies. If Qui-Gon had survived, Anakin would have never turned to the dark side. Filoni, George, everyone has agreed that that was the ultimate thing that sealed the fate of Anakin Skywalker. And the music behind it, oh my gosh, you can't even not talk about the Duel of Fates, the soundtrack. John Williams comes back and lays down some awesome music.
the music, the whole movie is great. There's
Mhm.
there's no bad music. But that's the one that the iconic is the Duel
Yep.
of Fates for sure.
It just starts up. Now, honestly, as much as I love the Duel of Fates, that was one of the parts of the movie. I think that was the first time, even as a kid, where I was like, okay, that's really cool that Padme is retaking the throne room. I don't care. Please go back to them fighting.
But it's also the part where and even back then, I always try to piece out what's the purpose of these shields that keep popping up, why
Yeah.
they keep open and closing like that. What's the purpose? They're not blocking any kind of energy or whatever from the generator because there's people standing in there, so it can't be that fatal.
Right.
So that was always my thing, is why does it keep coming on and off?
I remember as a young child always being like, hold on, why aren't they using force speed? Why isn't Obi-Wan using... We just saw him use super speed in the beginning of this to run away from the destroyers. Where'd that go? And people, of course, they kind of explained it, oh, he wasn't centered, he wasn't at peace, so he couldn't activate, blah blah. Regardless, it's still just a plot hole because it needs to be, it had to happen that way. So I'm not upset by it, but there are still
Padawan too.
Yeah, he's still a Padawan, but
he's immature. He was too. He was. If you look at his face, he was.
He was doing what Maul was doing. He was pacing and angry. That's why another thing.
You could see look at his face. He was frustrated about And
that's why another reason we fell in love with Qui-Gon is he just starts meditating. He's like, okay, well, if this is going to happen, let me just center myself a little bit. And man, I did not, even as a kid, to this day, I know Qui-Gon dies, but it's still I always just flinch. I'm like, oh no. It was a powerful moment. They really made us care for this character in only one movie. And it then kind of started the newest trope in Star Wars, which is make you fall in love with some random new Jedi you've just seen and then kill him.
Yeah, well, and that's where they got the MMO. They got where you kind of charge your force, the meditation. They based it off of that scene where the Sith meditation's them pacing.
Yeah, the anger,
and then the Jedi's on their knees.
Yeah,
so that's where the those posts they kind of get as now the general Sith meditation is them pacing angrily.
Yep. And so to really move on, just kind of from the Jedi and the Sith part of this, though, we have the droid army, another big thing. I mean, the droids came first. We don't get the clones until movie number 2. There are no clones whatsoever in this. It is just Jedi versus droids on a planet.
Well, even in the droids are unique in this movie because they change completely. I mean, there's still the B1s and stuff, but they gain personalities after this one, and this one they're very. And I kind of wish they didn't get kind of silly because by you get to the third movie, they're just fully cartoonish.
Right.
But yeah, there is the first time we have gotten enemy droids, because before there was always just stormtroopers.
Yep.
So this is way different. It's the whole point of getting the feel for the bad guys of kind of this mass army that it's kind of being the tyranny of the pressure from the bad guys, but something completely different. If we get another suit of soldiers in armor, it would be kind of annoying because it'd be looking at the sequels where you got that. It's the same thing. It's too close to home.
And it almost sucks that you weren't able to think about it as much, though, because it's also crazy when you do go through a lot of the comics and the books and things that follow. There's a lot of Dooku is still a Jedi at the beginning of the Phantom Menace movie. Yeah. That's how recently his turn is and stuff in the Star Wars movies. Like you wouldn't know that until you start reading comics. Like, oh my god, he's actively a Jedi Knight or Jedi Master working with the Council in the time that we, because then we see it in the Tales of the Jedi. And
even in episode 2, some of them don't believe that he's working for the
right, yeah, because he's still a good guy. Phantom Menace, I think, also suffered a lot though from having such a massive world that they didn't try to fill. Not in a bad way. Like, they weren't trying to create the prequel to all of Star Wars with this. This was not George Lucas trying to tell everyone the origins of the Force and blah, 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 and this and that.
Well, they kind of did in a way.
But they did, yeah. Like, he talks about midi-chlorians, and that's the first time we hear about that. And that was another big contentious point.
Yeah, a lot of people were upset about that.
Like, what do you mean? It's in your blood? Like, what the heck? No, like, but it didn't. It didn't.
A lot of people thought the Force was more like magic at the time. And then they basically made it more scientific, so a lot of people were upset about that.
But see, the thing is too, it was like, but you guys don't understand it. Like, they're not saying just because you have more midichlorians in your blood that the Force is more powerful than you. It just means when you start learning how to try and make that connection, it's easier. It's actually almost worse if you have a really, really high midichlorian count, especially as like a young clutchling or a young Padawan and stuff, because then you're going to get emotional and accidentally throw things around and hurt people. Because that's not the point of the Force, but what they were really saying is Anakin is stupid powerful, and that's why he was able to pilot these crazy fast.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because they never talk about him like growing up. She never talks about him being able to throw stuff. Really, just him being able to like see the future, like see things hidden. Like, for instance, where he does the little test, they have the images hidden from him. He's able to identify all the images.
No problem.
And the only human able to be a pod racer at the time, which is crazy when he's, I believe his character is, 9 in the movie?
Yeah.
A 9-year-old able to do one of the deadliest races in the galaxy.
Yeah, the only human. Right. And then not only can he race, but he can win. And he does win the Boonta Eve. But I feel like there were a lot of just fun choices in this movie, like, because Jar Jar was one of them. Yes, he talks a little silly, but then they're like, one of my favorite aliens we see are the 2-headed announcers for the Boonta Eve.
Well, there's a lot of those, like Watto. I love Watto's design.
Oh, yeah, Watto was hilarious.
Sebulba's, I love Sebulba's design as well.
Yes. That's another thing that we didn't even know who this character was. Quinlan Voss is in The Phantom Menace. A lot of people might not know that, but for a brief
in the background
second,
randomly.
Yeah, there's just when they're eating at the area where Sebulba is, like at the opening scene, he's just at a table chilling, and I was like, that means they know. Like, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan know him. Well, that would have been cool. No mention of it. They literally I think it was one of those things where they made the design of that character in the background, and then later in the Clone Wars, they were like, hey, that guy looked cool. Let's make him a Jedi.
Or that, or somebody saw an action figure they made of him. I don't know if they did, but that's what I imagined. They were like, they saw something and they're like, "Oh, that'd be cool to make him a Jedi. He looks like a cool Jedi," without doing any research where he was from or something. But it's funny. I think it's Legends. I don't think they've converted it to canon. But it's funny. The Quadrix guy. It's the guy with the 4 engines.
Yeah.
What's funny is he's actually like he is one of the ones that their pod racer goes bad and goes crazy. But I don't know if it's 100% canon still, but he actually is like a professional pod racer, and he actually goes on to win the full championship after he fixes his pod racer. So it's like, if that's the true, if his pod racer didn't happen to break that day, he would have won.
Was it Ben Quagenero or something like that?
Yeah, it's like Quad. Yeah, it's some weird. But if you play the game, he has one of the highest stats in the game as well.
Yeah. That was such a fun game.
I remember because you have 2 more engines, but
yeah, we kind of talked about it maybe in another podcast. But if not, I vastly remembered. I think one of the main reasons they literally made it in that game for the pod racer game, you felt like you were going so fast because instead instead of you just going over the map also went under you, so it just made it just go crazy fast. And yeah, that game was hard, but it was so much fun.
It needed to be.
Aura Singh. We get Aura Singh in the Phantom Menace. Never talked about again until Clone Wars.
Well, she's just standing there during the pod race. That's it.
Yeah, there's a lot of really awesome characters
until the Clone Wars show, I believe. Right?
Yeah.
I don't think she's in episode 2, is she?
Not that I know of. No, she's not hired by Jango Fett or anything like that. So,
Yeah.
but she's a very prominent bounty hunter now. So yeah, Phantom Menace sets up just a lot of crazy stuff. And again, kind of like you said, it was such a crazy long haul in between those movies. After Return of the Jedi, we didn't think there was going to be another movie. I don't think the whole world was really taken by surprise when we heard that George Lucas was making another movie. And by the way, we didn't hear about it until it was coming out. Like that's if you lived in the Midwest like we did, you didn't get the breaking news from Hollywood execs.
Well, it's also different too because back then we didn't have the internet like we do now.
Yeah,
and I didn't have internet at home.
Yeah,
the internet existed. It was very very early. And so there was like, if you didn't see it like a trailer before a movie, and if you didn't have family goes to movies, my family didn't go to movies too often. So if you didn't see it like a blockbuster, like an advertisement or the store or like on a commercial on TV, you didn't know what was going to happen. So for most people, it came out of nowhere right before it was supposed to come out.
And I feel like that's another thing that kind of immediately hurt the prequel era which is weird because even in the EU, they didn't really touch on prequel that often. It was what happens with Luke, what happens after Luke, what happens with Yuzong Vong and all that crap. They didn't touch on beforehand. And I really just feel like a lot of people were expecting kind of the stories they were getting from the expanded universe, but then live action, which is the same thing that a lot of people are complaining about nowadays, where they're still wanting these books. But those books were never canon. George Lucas never said, this is my idea and stuff.
Well, he wrote the prequels, but there's so much change before. The prequels never fully released to the public. It was kind of just what he wrote, because he wrote kind of the main story. But a lot of it changed from what he originally wrote to on screen. There's so much didn't come from what he originally wrote, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, because of the big gap and how things ended in Episode 6, you was guaranteed the first movie to come out for Star Wars that it was probably going to fail because people were going to expect something that they couldn't get.
Mm-hmm.
They were wanting Episode 4, the sequel, or A New Hope, the sequel, or they wanted more of that. They wanted what happened to Luke immediately after Episode 6. They wanted that general feeling that they had back when those movies first came out.
Right.
And it was doomed to fail at that time because people went in, had something in their head, and regardless of what they were going to get shown, I don't think it would have done good. I think it would have been a flop with fans. Yeah. It was a flop with every fans. I think there's quite a few fans that enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think it just became popular to hate it eventually.
Well, and again, the only people, especially back in today's world, it's still hard to get compliments out of anyone through any type of online social forum. But complaints, you can get hella easy. So even in the 90s to 2000s, the only people talking about Star Wars online were loudly against it. Not the majority whatsoever, but like today, they were just this very loud minority that would never shut up or go away. The fact that it led Jake Lloyd to literally develop like schizophrenia and like actually have to live with his parents for the rest of his life due to having this mental disorder, that's beyond messed up. That's bullying to the nth degree.
Oh, and he's kind of lucky that he didn't have what we have today with like Twitter and stuff.
Gosh, yeah,
because it would have been a lot worse.
And a lot of the people today who are complaining about the sequels, they would have 100% done the same
way they did. Well, I think they would have been worse. Than what they did to Rey.
Yes,
for sure. And it's you think it's similar to how people treated the sequels, people treating the prequels. Though personally, I don't know. I feel like they have their hits and misses. I still would rate Episode 1 over than I would, but I guess there's some biasy into that. So
there's hella nostalgia for me. I've always said that. As much like I love Episode 1, 2, and 3 because they came up with me. Like I grew up around that era of Star Wars.
it's just the sequels. Just there's a lot of the sequels that are like too safe.
Yeah.
It's like they're too afraid to do anything compared to like the prequels. And the prequels, there's very little of the original trilogy into those movies. They start sprinkling characters. You see a little bit of Chewbacca, in episode 3. You see Anakin, but he's not the same character as Darth Vader
At all.
Obi-Wan is not the same character as Obi-Wan in the sequels.
Yeah.
I mean
You'll get a little bit
trilogy.
of we'll get like a Mon Mothma and stuff like that in the background.
But they're not. But the problem with the sequels is one of the problems I had is it's too close to what they wanted to bring back the original trilogy.
Yeah.
They should have separated completely because the prequels are not that far from the originals because you have Anakin as a kid and he goes to adults. They're not that big of a difference.
Right.
But so much changes when you get, like I said, with the droids. I mean, we don't have a single stormtrooper. They don't exist. We have droids. And so yeah, it's just they're not the only ones that have done that. We're getting some in the sequels that have copied the formula of the original trilogy. But that was just crazy about the prequels is they don't replicate that formula of the kind of the Han Solo character, the Chewbacca character.
Right.
It's all the closest thing we get to a Chewbacca character is Jar Jar Binks, and he's nowhere close to being the same character.
Yeah, he's kind of just
and he doesn't
comedic relief.
And he doesn't stick around in the sequels.
Yeah.
And the 2 and 3. He's in the background a couple times, but that's it. The only recurring characters we get are Anakin's, Obi-Wan, C-3PO,
R2-D2.
R2-D2.
That's pretty much it. There's a solid cast of 4 to 5, and that literally is it. Because, the prequel movies are not about the hero's journey. They're about the hero's fall. So they break apart entirely from... And that's, again, why you're going to get weird dialogue. You're going to get, like, some moments that don't make exact sense. Because this is not a tale that's been told a billion different times. This is... No, we had the hero's journey. We had this beautiful space odyssey. Yeah. But this is, like... Now we're having Space Iliad. We're having the beforehand story. We're having the crazy stuff, the Trojan War.
How did the Empire get to be the Empire, essentially? How did they get to that point? So they had to get to explain, where did the Empire come from? Where did all these soldiers and all this technology come from? Because if you look at the prequels, but at that time in Episode 1, none of that technology that you see currently, that you see later on, matches.
Yeah.
It's completely different. And you get to see how that happened.
I mean, even with Sidious, you're like, how is Sheev Palpatine going to become Sidious? He's not that messed up. Is it just age? He's not that long of a time period in between the two.
Or how does he become power? We get to see how his first steps.
Because he doesn't do anything.
How he rises.
Yeah, he doesn't shoot force lightning. He does nothing besides talk to people in Phantom Menace. So again, we're just sitting there like, who is this guy?
We get to see early Coruscant with mostly Sidious, and then eventually you get to see with the Council.
But that's awesome too, because that's where we really get the fall of the Council. Like, these are the most powerful moments where Yoda is saying things like, if the dark side reemerged, it did. Notice it, we would. And they're like, no, actually you didn't. It was right under your nose this whole time.
Well, even Qui-Gon didn't sense anything. It was actually Obi-Wan's the only one that actually ever sensed it. At the very beginning of the movie, Obi-Wan's like, I sense something
greater,
sinister,
further away. He's like, I sense something. I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi.
Qui-Gon's like, stay in the moment. It's important, which is true, but also is like, you kind of wonder, like, Qui-Gon also is pretty blind to what's going on.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, this is the hubris of the Jedi. The Phantom Menace shows the Jedi at their peakiest peak. Their highest hubris is in that moment where they think they are completely untouchable from the dark side.
You think of it as, like, I like to compare it to the Roman Empire, because we're going into the High Republic's really the height of the Roman Empire.
The rise of it.
You're getting the normal Republic, what we perceive in the prequels as kind of the aftermath of the kind of peace established by the Roman Empire as a lot of the greats. So it's starting to fall apart because they're not as ambitious as they used to be, because they've lost, quote unquote, their version of Caesar, whatever they want to find it as. The reason why it's so, because it's progressing at a steady rate, because they're just now learning hyperspace travel, and then we get to this long after that period, we're getting to the prequel Republic period, where hyperspace travel is established. The Republic's established everywhere now. I mean, it already was, but it's even bigger.
Yep.
So we get to see, and it doesn't really grow between them. So it's like kind of this like idle piece here and there, bureaucrat. Just like nothing's really progressing. And then until the Clone Wars happens, and it kind of pushes forward, and that's what happens in our world. A lot of cultures, you look back, or like the United States. What progresses the United States so quickly? World War II, the Cold War.
Yeah.
The boom of technology from major wars or events.
And then you give us too much time to stare at each other, and we tear ourselves apart. Or
like I said, the Roman Empire, the British Empire. When they establish these empires, they start progressing in technology because they're spreading out. So it's a similar. It's really cool that it mimics real society.
Yeah.
But alien. So yeah, it had to fail because, like I said, the gap. But there's so many cool things that came of it. So many things that are like, if I could go back and change it, we could. Yeah. But there's just so many fun moments, and I just got done rewatching it, and it's crazy. You go back from episode 4. One of the things that really stands out to people was like the cantina scene, and go to Mos Eisley with all these unique aliens. And then we go back to Mos Eisley Tatooine, and we see all these unique aliens again, but even more because they have the technology to do it. And it's crazy how like the life and all the pictures is going from like just sparse characters. Well, not sparse, but they're like people, to like a lot. And like every scene on Tatooine is full of characters.
It's funny not just Jawas and people's in spacesuits. It's like this guy has a
very
head
little
this long.
Jawas in episode 1. Actually, if you look back, there's not many in there.
Yeah, they throw around a lot more of the other, like, there's like those small little blue dinosaur looking people. There's Sebulba's race. You see a good few of those. And again, these are characters that you see on screen. They have dialogue. They have like moments. Sebulba is pretty much the main antagonist of young Anakin Skywalker. Watto has multiple moments where he is focus of the entire, like, like the stubble on his face, like he just looks greasy and like he runs a slum shop. Like he 100% just looks like a really bad person who just wants money.
And it's crazy because, like you said, that there's a with these kind of random there's just so much full life.
Yeah.
That we get.
Watto, you look at Watto, you know he's a used car salesman.
In there for a second, or a pawn shop. Guy. And we see these like random characters that we only get like a couple of seconds of screen time, but they make a long-lasting appearance later on. Like we're seeing. Even Darth Maul, he's not in the movie that much.
Yeah.
But he comes back a lot.
Oh my gosh. You're right. There's now, look at the Clone Wars saga that happens. The comics, the games, the books. Darth Maul had 3 lines and was on the screen long enough to do a fight scene and a chase, kinda, in the desert. And then he gets cut in half and he dies. That's it. That was it. There was no plan for him to be any bigger than that. By the time episode 2 came out, he was a fuck it in everyone's memory. We were gone. We were like, okay, we're on to Count Dooku now. No, the rest of the world did not give up.
Yeah, he went through a lot of stages. He went from like going back to his roots with the witches. He went from going nuts. He went from like
being Mandalore,
leading being Mandalore, leading the dark. Which gang did he run? Was it Dark Sun or not Dark Sun?
He ran Crimson Dawn.
Yeah, Crimson Dawn. He becomes a head gangster.
Yep.
He's like all over the place.
An amazing story. Like I agree with everyone. I would have preferred him to be the bad guy in the sequels as well. just because they had built up such this dope backstory for Maul. I'm like, I could see him survive. Yeah, he totally made it. Like Solo. That the end of Solo, when we see Crimson Dawn Maul, that was awesome. And that all just started from this random character who dies at the end of a fight scene.
Yeah. And like you said, he has very little lines. He just stands in the background for a little bit for the... Now there are two of them.
Yeah, right, exactly. But we remember those lines are so iconic. Even if they're memes, they're so iconic. Now there are two of them. This is getting out of hand. Just the random things that I remember from that. Another random Glub Shido, the guy who is selling the like cooked frogs. Jar Jar like grabs it with his tongue. Oh, wugga wugga, wugga wugga, and he just spits it out, and that's what causes the fight with Saboba. Like, there's just so many great little moments that make that world feel so lived in and just fun.
Well, now, and I can't do any Starfighter game or can't do anything when I get really fast without yelling, now this is pod racing.
Now this is pod racing. Yeah, let's try spinning. That works.
If I get to go to the theme park,
yeah,
and if I get to hit the hyperdrive button, I want to yell that out.
Yep, you gotta have to get it filmed too. Now this is pod racing. Bam! Hyperdrive. Oh yeah, you have to. Get
it, Chewie. This is pod racing.
Yeah, I absolutely. There are so many amazing. And how many people still talk like Jar Jar when they're just having? Oh, Misa have a good time. Like, it's just, you don't hate him. You just thought he was a little annoying. Shut up. You're having too much fun with it. You can't. Everyone unironically hated loved Jar Jar until they realized, no, secretly we actually all like Jar Jar.
I never once hated him. I remember so many people saying they hated the character.
I'm like, why?
I was like, he was one of my favorite characters. I remember I had a little figure. I got it as what's funny is I didn't really get, I believe it was Taco Bell.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to like a birthday party, and it was back in the day when you gave out party favors.
Oh yeah, everyone got a little something.
And his he wasn't very well off family. And so his mom wanted to give out party favors. I guess she got the idea of giving out his old toys just as party favors. Like, I felt terrible because I got his toys, like a couple of his toys in a bag, but one of them was a Jar Jar Binks toy, and I remember because you hit his one arm up, and you like twist his arm, and it had a long tongue that shot out.
Yeah,
I thought it was the coolest toy.
I still love that scene too, because he's like getting the fruit off the table, and then Qui-Gon catches his tongue.
Yeah, because he's the whole time talking about how Jedis have quick reflexes, and it's like he's like setting it up to like catch the tongue to prove that we do have quick reflexes.
Also, stop doing that. It's gross. No, and that was another thing that I really enjoyed too. Is we did get to learn more about Anakin, whereas Qui-Gon, talks with Shmi, Anakin's mom, and literally she's like, I don't know what happened either. We kind of talked about this very, very briefly before the podcast, but yeah, Shmi was like, I just kind of, from what we assume, either there was just not a dad, because he's like, he's a bum, and I don't really know who it is, or the Force straight up immaculate concepted a baby boy, and that was mind blowing as well. We find out like, oh my god, this is like the coming of Jesus in Star Wars. Like, this doesn't have a dad.
That's how Qui-Gon interpreted it.
Yeah.
Because he already kind of was interested in him because he realized he had a strong Force connection. But when his mom said that, that's when he decided. And he talks about the
Chosen One prophecy, right?
Chosen One, and then he brings up that he was born of the Force.
Yep.
And so, and she kind of, and rewatching it, she kind of the way she talks about it at the beginning, it seems like she just has a deadbeat husband that left. But she kind of like trails off like there was nobody ever. And so that became the whole idea of, was Anakin born of the Force, like you said, kind of like a Jesus moment of a mysterious pregnancy where there's no father involved.
And that just added to this awesome mystery that was Anakin Skywalker. Because as much as we all knew so much about Darth Vader, we had no idea who Anakin Skywalker is. And I loved young Anakin because he reminded me of myself kind of still. Like, he sees a pretty girl and his first words are you an angel? Like, Bro, that's a
The
good
angels
pickup
are in
line.
Star Wars for some reason.
Yeah, now we find out that angels are a race on this one moon in Star Wars, and then they put it in the Clone Wars later on. Like it becomes a full canon thing. We have the moment where like you gotta hit him on the nose.
I love the pit droids. They're one of my
Yeah,
favorite droids.
pit droids are awesome. There was a lot of really good droids delivered in this too. New droids we had never seen before.
Droidicas.
Oh, the Droideka is so amazing. I'm so excited to be getting that from Black Series. Hey, Hasbro, if for some reason you're watching this, though, why do we not have... You just gave us one in the retro figures. We have
her outfits so much. There's so many things you could do for her.
This is the only time it's Natalie Portman wearing it. Every other scene, it's Keira Knightley.
There's one scene where she does go back to... There's a different outfit, but yes.
Yeah, well, because they're giving us the Black Series figure. Yeah, we're getting a Black Series figure of young Anakin. No,
technically
soon.
3 times,
and then we're getting
one at the very end.
At the very end, the white dress. Yeah,
and she does it one time, and my wife pointed it out to me because I didn't catch it at first. I don't remember which part it was. There's one time she does go back as the queen. I believe it's where she's talking at the Senate.
Yes, because Anakin comes in and she's like getting ready or something.
Yeah.
It's
the Senate. The Senate at the very beginning where she's in that dress.
Yep, this is the most iconic
the very
dress.
beginning.
Yep, this one right here.
The Senate, and then the very end, and the rest is she's not. And I mean, if I was her, I wouldn't wear
it. But we need. Yeah. I need this red dress. The TVC line has the black dress, and they have the Episode 2 peasant's disguise. We need red dress. It's the most iconic.
Yeah,
Queen Amidala.
When you think of Queen Amidala, you think of that version.
And again, that's another talking point. That she's not a senator yet. We don't know Senator Padme. That doesn't happen in the first movie. In the first movie, in the first movie, she is only royalty. So, like, for that first whole while until Episode 2 came out, and we realized that they don't stay queen forever, we thought that's just who she was going to be forever. This was a queen. We met royalty.
It's funny because they oversell her character, or she oversells her role. Yeah, where she doesn't need to. And I get they're trying to make her like put her as a character in the show, but to me it's like she like they're on the ship and they're like she's like, go, hey Padme, go clean, or handmaid Padme, go clean that droid for us. Because he earned it. She's over there hand cleaning the droids. Like, you don't have to. You could have just had any other handmaid clean it. Yeah. You don't have. You're the queen. Why are you scrubbing down R2-D2?
Because she wanted to give her things personally. That's how Padme works. She's selfless.
Well, she's ignorant because she demands to go onto Tatooine. So
I love how sassy Padme is during those moments, like especially at the end where she's like, I think you're putting too much faith in this boy, and he's like, I don't think I asked your opinion.
She's a 14-year-old leader of society. Yes. You gotta have to be something,
but I just love it because
over.
Qui-Gon just says something along the lines of, the queen trusts me, so you should too, and Padme just goes, well, I don't think it's a good idea at all. And you're like, oh, that's actually the queen. Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah, it's funny as we forget her character's 14 in that movie.
Yeah. That's another thing. Everyone wanted to think it was so weird with the love triangle. Again, Anakin's like 9. She's 14. She's only 5 years older.
Yeah, Anakin is 9 at the time.
She's not that much older than him.
Well, at that age, it is kind of weird. But when they get adults, you understand as an adult that's like not that big of a deal.
Right,
like,
exactly.
There's people that have bigger difference. But at a kid's, it's like you're thinking of like a high schooler and a elementary school.
Those 5 years are very fundamental for growth, but Anakin knew what he liked.
I mean, if I was his age, when I saw the movie, she was hot to me too. So.
Bro, yeah, when I was his age, had Natalie Portman walked in, I would have been like...
At least we weren't creepy about it because we were kids when we watched it.
Yes, exactly. We were kids too, so it wasn't weird.
Yeah. She's an attractive, or she's a beautiful young lady during the movie.
And Natalie Portman's just a beautiful woman, period, now. So that can last forever.
I'd say during the movie, yes. I'm
But
so because I'm an adult now.
yeah, it is an absolutely brilliant time. I like the ending of it too. Like you said, none of the music is bad. Like that big Gungan celebration at the end where they're all like partying down the street of Naboo. Naboo had such an
idea for the big party.
Yeah,
and they added it to
the rest of Star Wars. But I love that, like the Naboo vibe. It was such this beautiful Spanish, Italian, lakeside villa.
Very advanced in technology. Yeah. We talked about their blasters are very powerful.
Yeah, they have grappling hooks, which was something else I was unknown of. But powerful enough to like shoot through stuff.
Batman-ish physics breaking.
The Nabooian cruisers always look gorgeous. That nice, sleek, metallic look.
There's no ship that looks like them ever in all of Star Wars, and then we find out in Mandalorian that those ships are like super advanced.
The N1 is the very last.
That good pilots. We watched the movie. They kind of seem they're kind of lame, but they don't realize they have like really powerful ships.
They have some of the best ships in the entire galaxy. Because they're the only ones still made by hand. So like that's another thing that Nabooians care.
Anakin's literally on a hot rod.
Yeah.
His first time piloting a starship is like one of the fastest starfighters in the galaxy.
But hey, man, he's got it. He's the chosen one. He's going to blow up the Trade Federation ship and save everybody.
Immediately gets off autopilot and starts flying in between things. I'm like, dude doesn't know how to fly the thing. He's like, I'm just going to start barrel rolling.
Yep.
And then
accidentally ends up inside.
Into the ship.
And that's the Force coming through as what we would call luck.
Yeah, and somehow a chain reaction in that hangar that they put major power cells or something.
Well, they didn't expect the kid to fly inside.
I mean, I guess. I mean, they didn't expect... Well, the whole point of the Trade Federation is the whole establishment of them.
Yeah.
Is they use this military force that is quite formidable, like... Because the amount of them and the blasters they use are really strong.
But it's by numbers. Like they are there just to obliterate you by blaster fire.
Well, it's an intimidation force. Yeah. It's to subjugate because what they are is they're a company.
Yeah, they're called the Trade Federation. Like they're not
runs several plants. They're in charge of them. The trade. They basically strong arm smaller planets like Naboo into working under their trade, and so they basically run planets. So they talk about like Trade Federation controlled planets because they don't like they kind of do it. They're kind of bureaucratic gangsters. They do legally gangster stuff. They're conglomerate that like strong arms, like I said, smaller planets. Like you gotta do trade, you gotta go through us. We basically run your planet.
Yep.
And so then they get kind of strong armed.
It'd be a real shame if anybody was to bust up the windows on this here planet.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? Stop our droid army?
Right. We have billions of droids ready to go right now.
And you think it's not common? And the Naboo doesn't have an army. They have good technology, but they don't have an army, and that's normal for a lot of these planets because the Republic establishes they don't need an army, even though the Republic doesn't have an army.
Right.
So it's like, it's a time of peace. Nobody needs an army. And then Trade Federation's over here like, we just made one?
Yeah, we just kind of made one because this old wrinkly guy kind of told us to, probably.
And it's hard to grasp the situation because we see it from the perspective of like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. They just make a mincemeat of these droids. They're not the top tier soldiers, but like you think about normal people can't fight these things.
Right.
You think about when they're shooting like the shields, they're just endless fire and they're just marching. And they don't care if one of them falls; they just walk over them.
Yep.
And then the Gungan army itself is a really powerful army, and they struggle fighting them.
Yeah, very powerful warrior culture, very very proud, very
we
strong.
We forget that 'cause we see Jar Jar, we see the goofiness of Jar Jar, and the shaking thing with the Boss Nass, which is funny. But besides those little goofy parts and how they say things, they're actually really powerful. Like they're very proud warrior culture.
It's gnarly too because like by the end, then we get this lovely ending to like what we know is like this weird piece. We're like, okay. The bad guy just said he's going to watch Anakin closely. That's creepy. And Qui-Gon's now dead. Darth Maul's dead, at least too, that we thought. But we hear like Yoda and Mace talking like, were they really a Sith? Well, two there always are, no more, no less, a master and an apprentice. So we learn more about the rule of two, and we now learn like, okay, so they think Maul was the master? Wait, I'm confused.
Yeah, well, so they weren't sure.
Yeah, and that's what the beautiful thing is, though, that like Phantom Menace left everything like obvious. We're like, I can kind of see how things are going bad, but I don't know why yet.
You think about too. You said the word the Phantom Menace. It's a weird name for a Star Wars movie too.
Oh yeah,
Phantom Menace.
The Phantom Menace.
I get the idea because it's the overarching. It's the hidden evil.
Exactly.
And it's funny. They don't defeat the hidden evil. It kind of comes out, and it's the beginning. So yeah, it needed to start small.
But it has a great start because of that. Again, they think that hubris is still so high. They've defeated Darth Maul at the cost of Qui-Gon Jinn, so they think they're still winning. Something weird happened, but it's not bad.
And the bad guy is just the senator of this backwater planet.
Yep.
That's like this. It's just this planet that's in the very far edges of the Republic, and he's the senator in Coruscant this whole time, right next to the Jedi Temple. It's also weird that the whole peace thing they do, most of the Jedi, I think all the Jedi High Council, I don't know if all of them, but most of them show up for that.
Well, and so many crazy things happen also just in this moment where it is like, how did none of you feel the vibes from Sidious? Because we literally have this now out of nowhere at the beginning of what could be a war between the Trade Federation and this other planet. Why is there a vote of no confidence going out against the Chancellor? Hold on, what? No one's even talked to the Jedi to be like, hey, go investigate this Trade Federation thing. They're just like, no, war.
We don't want to be involved.
Which, and again, but that's like, what do you mean? That's your whole job is to go talk to people. Like, shut up.
It's kind of a thing that Yoda kind of started. Like, we just want to just sit around and meditate. We don't want to be involved. We'll do a couple ambassador things, but we don't really want to get involved. We'll do our thing, but.
And at first, this would make no sense for a lot of people. Because Yoda doesn't seem to be this kind of a person. But after reading High Republic and what they've just gone through in the High Republic, I now 100% understand why Yoda was like, the galaxy, scary it is. Stay here, we should. I mean, to those who don't know about the High Republic, I highly recommend you guys check it out. But the Jedi Order has just pretty much, by the time of Phantom Menace, fought off an elite marauding army that had a crazy force-consuming Jedi-eating dog. And a lot of them.
No.
Layman's terms to
whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever the hell it is. Squid face thing.
I wouldn't even call it. I guess the closest thing you call it some kind of dog, but it's weird.
It's like if you took an Aqualish and a dog and...
But it kind of changes shape a lot, too.
Yeah.
Well, it's weird because I think we only rarely get a description because the Jedi, they can't really look at the thing.
Right. From what we have now, though, is the description from, the other people. And
we have a couple images of it now, but I think they changed shit. I don't know. I'm kind of hope we don't fully know. I think that's the cool thing about them.
But right. And so the Jedi have just recently in the High Republic gone into a state of isolationism, and this is them coming out of it. So it was very, very jarring for a lot of beginning Star Wars fans to hop into a prequel era filled with Jedi and to not see them fighting Sith right and left, to not see them wielding their lightsaber like a light stick. This is a very different era of Star Wars. This is the Jedi believe they are so grand and powerful that no one can touch them. So they don't even really... The only lightsabers we see activated are Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn. That's it. There's not a single other lightsaber that gets used in that movie. The really big lightsaber fights come in 2 and 3. Like, everything before that is just those two. So, it was a really great time to get to watch and relive it. I mean, 25 years, that's crazy. I cannot believe that it has been 25 years since Phantom Menace dropped. It really
Yeah,
made the
we're
Star
old.
Wars. Yeah, I know, right? It sucks. It took the Star Wars world and it shot it into the stratosphere. Love it or hate it, it became one of the most talked about franchises in the entire world. If it hadn't been for Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, we got so many video games because of the prequel era. And those video games are what helped push into the rest of the Star Wars world. Like the prequels, without them, the way that they happened and the way that it did, Star Wars would not be the same it would be today. Would Disney have bought it? Probably not. I don't think they would have cared had there been no prequels and stuff. But
They already kind of had their toes in Star Wars. They had the Star Tours thing,
yeah,
and they had things like at Disneyland, Disney World that were Star Wars. So them being involved with Star Wars wasn't new.
yeah,
They just never owned it. They had their toes dipped in it already. So yeah, it's I don't know if they would have bought it, like you said. I'm glad they did. I know
yeah.
some people disagree with that statement, but I think Star Wars would be dead right now if they didn't.
Yep. And like with the prequels, sometimes there's a long pause in between things, but it's worth it. It's always worth it. And the pause we have now is months to maybe 2 months. That's amazing. That's such a crazy world to think that we don't have to worry about there not being something Star Wars to watch. I mean, there's so much you can rewatch now. But I'd highly recommend everyone go back, rewatch The Phantom Menace, find all the fun little quips and parts in there that you probably missed when you were a lot younger and watched it, or just rewatch it and find out like the parts that you might have been a little too critical on or not critical enough on. It's fine. Like all Star Wars doesn't have to be perfect because it's not.
Well, like now, like one of the things I noticed today that I never really thought about is the very end. It's funny that they were just now talking about was that the master? Who is the master? Who's the shadow? And Sidious is on stage,
Yeah.
and the Jedi Council members, which I thought was weird that they went to Naboo for this coronation thing, are right there.
Mm-hmm.
They're literally within. They're not that far apart from Sidious himself. He's literally standing right in front of the entire Jedi Council, and they have no idea.
Even though we all know that, like, Sidious is extremely powerful, is extremely filled with the Force.
Well, he has to be.
And is just able to apparently mask it and use the hubris of the Jedi that perfectly. Yeah, he's within a lightsaber's reach away. All the problems could have been solved.
Quite a bit. There was a senator, and he becomes the Supreme Chancellor. He's constantly around them, and they have no idea.
None.
It's nuts.
But that's what leads into the amazingness that is the fall of the Jedi, where we get into, of course, the Empire rises and things like that.
Don't forget, we get some. We get one of the cool characters we'd even touch on was we get some badass. We talked about Liam Neeson and stuff, but we got our Jedi, the youngest Jedi Master on the Council. What's his name? Can't think of his name right now.
I'm trying to think.
The purple lightsaber.
Oh, Mace Windu?
Yeah, Mace Windu.
Oh.
Because he's in that movie, and yeah, at the time, he's the youngest council member, and we got him. It's funny to see him in a Star Wars movie, especially during that time.
Yes, that was that was the height of some Samuel L. Jackson fame.
What's his...
And we don't even know he has a purple lightsaber yet. That's the other cool thing.
I think it's the first movie he's in that he doesn't cuss.
Yeah, probably. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that. But yeah, Phantom Menace, he doesn't even have his purple lightsaber yet. Or at least not that we know of, because he hasn't used it.
Oh, he has it. We just
doesn't. Yeah, he never wields it, so we don't know. But yeah, Mace Windu was a very integral part, especially we know that like the judging of Anakin Skywalker. But we also get Plo Koon. Don't forget that. We get to see dope ass Master Plo Koon. We get an extremely terrifying Yaddle. She looks like she's about to keel over any second. She does not look good. And then Yariel Poof, big old Q-tip. Yeah, that is the very first live action.
Really long neck guy.
Yeah, Yariel Poof.
I don't think he's Does he show back up?
Yeah,
And
Yariel
two?
Poof is a very pivotal role in like three things. um,
He's yeah.
but no, I think the most terrifying thing that haunts me forever is Yaddle in Phantom Menace. She does not look good. She's like a pile of green,
That's
saggy.
right before she gets killed.
Yeah, but she does not. She looks way better in Tales of the Jedi than she does in the fucking movies. Oh god, that was hideous.
It was the first time we saw a new Yoda race.
Yeah, it really was. But that's what we'll begin to move on to from the Phantom Menace into a much more CG'd Attack of the Clones, and then things get to balance back out towards Return of, or Revenge of the Sith. Phantom Menace, still one of my all-time top fives, one of my favorite Star Wars movies. It's got a lot of nostalgia in it. I'm not saying it's one of the best Star Wars films, but I just can't put it lower than 5 because it just means so much more to me. And it cemented, I think, this world into a world that is a Star Wars franchise world. Had the prequels done really bad, that would have been it. But we got so much more now, and I'm so excited that we got to live in a world where I got to see them in theaters because it was a time to be alive. It was really awesome. Hopefully they'll bring back some of the marketing like they did before and just throw Star Wars in your face everywhere because that was so much fun.
Oh, yeah. For the new movies.
Yeah, they need to get back to that.
It was back when people used. You can find old collectors that have a lot of that stuff, and I remember people collecting the pop cans because they thought they were going to be worth something, and the chip bags and stuff like that.
It's worth something if you like it. That's what it's worth. So, guys, thank you all so much for joining us. While you're down there liking and subscribing, tell us your favorite moment of Phantom Menace. What is something that you will always remember for the rest of your life? It's just stuck with you. Maybe it's a joyful moment or it's a serious moment, but what is your favorite Phantom Menace moment? Have an amazing rest of your week, everybody. And as always, may the Force serve you well.
And may the Force be with you.